Have you ever noticed that even when you want to feel better, sometimes part of you seems to block change? I mean, no one loves feeling anxious or depressed or argumentative. Well, maybe like the last one. But we find it hard to stop. We're told it's past trauma, it's in our DNA or some chemical imbalance. But I've found it may not be what's wrong with you that's the problem at all. Maybe there's something subconscious about worrying or feeling down that, well, feels right in some way. Sure, I doubt you can think of anything good right now about feeling anxious, worried, guilty, or depressed. It sounds ludicrous that those feelings would be positive. But what if I told you those and many other feelings often reflect your best qualities, the inner core part of you that likely matters the most? Today, we're going to explore why your values can create resistance to recovery and how you can transform that resistance into motivation and peace. Today, we're talking about the A in Team CBT or agenda setting. I'm Angela Poachch, a level 5 Team CBT master therapist, trainer, author, and mental health educator. In this video, we'll unpack arguably one of Dr. David Burns' most powerful tools since he expanded on cognitive behavior therapy back in the 80s, and that is positive reframing. Positive reframing is done during the agenda setting phase of team or assessment of resistance phase. And it's a way of looking at our feelings and thoughts as messengers that reveal what's important to us and gatekeepers to our value system. When we understand and acknowledge the benefits behind our emotions, resistance melts away and real change becomes possible. In Team CBT, we often talk about two kinds of resistance: process or process resistance. And that's when we don't want to do the work, like avoiding therapy homework or not wanting to face certain feelings, icky feelings or uncomfortable feelings. We might think it's the therapist's job to fix this, or we don't really want to do the exercise required. That's process resistance. There's a resistance to the process of recovery. And then we have outcome resistance. And that's when there's some subconscious or maybe even a conscious part of us that doesn't entirely want the problem to go away, or we fear the outcome of recovery. And that's because it's in some ways serving a purpose connected to us in our values. We're not crazy. We don't resist just because we want to resist. It's not some kind of weird thing going on. There's a reason you're in that state of mind. Let's look at an example. For example, a smoker might not want to give up smoking because smoking helps keep them thin. Or a mother who worries a lot might feel that's part of her job. She should care about the safety of her little ones. Today, we're going to focus on outcome resistance, and the tool to address that is positive reframing. Dr. David writes, this approach represents a radical departure from the way many psychiatrists and psychologists think about psychiatric symptoms as well as resistance. When I was a psychiatric resident, I was trained to think about resistance as something negative. For example, we may tell ourselves that resistant patients cling to their feelings of depression and worthlessness because they want attention, because they want to feel sorry for themselves, because they fear change, or they're afraid they'll lose their identity if they recover. While there's some truth to these formulations, they may not be helpful because they tend to cast the patient in a negative light, as if their symptoms and their resistance to change were somehow bad or childish or based on some kind of chemical balance in their brains. As you'll see, the Team CBT approaches resistance in a radically different manner. So let's look at an example. Imagine a single woman who's raising 3 kids, working full-time, and trying to help her aging mom transition to a retirement home. She often feels guilty. She might want to stop feeling guilty every time she drops her youngest child off at daycare. She might go to therapy to deal with childhood trauma, and it helps a bit. She might do cognitive behavior therapy to counteract the negative thoughts. But deep down, something pulls her back into these feelings of guilt. Why might feeling guilty be helpful to this mother? What advantage might feeling guilty have, or what might it show about her that's positive and awesome? Well, I think feeling guilty in this situation shows she wants to be the best mom and daughter, and she wants to be good at her job. Maybe it helps motivate her to find balance in a world of extreme demands on her time and energy. Guilt shows she's thinking she's capable and holds herself to this high standard. Perhaps guilt even keeps her from being complacent and reminds her to check in with her youngest child to make sure their needs are met. Or maybe guilt is acting like an alert. Maybe there's something she isn't addressing in her life that's important to her. Or let's take a young man with social anxiety. He wants to find a long-term partner, but his body cringes whenever he tries to talk to a woman. Perhaps his anxiety shows he's respectful of women and doesn't want to come off as cringy. Maybe it helps protect him from rejection. After all, you can't get rejected if you stay home. Anxiety might show he cares about how others feel around him and he wants them to be comfortable too. When we try to get rid of those emotions without any thought about why we have them in the first place, we attack the very values that make people good, caring human beings. Now, I'm not saying we should just accept all emotion and stay 100% anxious or depressed all the time. So, how do we honor these emotions and our values and still move forward to feeling great? Well, that's the whole where positive framing comes in. We stop and we ask ourselves some important questions about each of the feelings we are experiencing for a very specific moment in time of suffering. We might even ask these same questions about some of the negative thoughts we're having too. I'll talk about those questions that we're going to ask in a minute, but first, let's talk about why this even matters. So, positive reframing changes the focus of therapy or self work. Instead of fighting yourself or the painful feelings, you start a partnership with yourself and with these emotions themselves. You see, the emotions are an expression of your core values. They've been triggered by some upsetting event. But when they cause suffering, it's because there's distorted thinking involved. And if we ignore the values and just deal with the distorted thinking, we struggle with changing the expression. We resist giving up our beliefs, and rightly so. When those values, however, are honored, people suddenly become eager to change. The resistance disappears because the subconscious no longer feels threatened. If we don't address the subconscious resistance, we can just spin our wheels trying to use all kinds of therapy or self-help tools. We can go from one book to another with very little progress. Well, we might have some progress, but not really knocking anything out of the park. David writes, in fact, the attempt to help the patient without first dealing with the patient's resistance is the cause of nearly all therapeutic failure. But most therapists make this mistake over and over and don't realize their well-intentioned efforts to help actually trigger and reinforce the patient's resistance. Why? Because we don't want to give up our values, and those values are intrinsically linked to what we think and how we feel. Exploring our values doesn't correct negative thinking or change our limiting beliefs, but it does bring to the surface, to the conscious, all the reasons why we might be feeling this way. It helps us understand the triggers, the traumas, the upsetting event that we are experiencing, and how that's deeply connected to our core values. And we have to untangle all of that before we can move forward. Now, I'll say, this is rare what I'm about to say next, but I want to point it out because sometimes just doing positive reframing can be exactly what you need to recover. I had one client who, after doing positive reframing about her anxiety, decided she didn't need any more therapy. She was done. She realized she was being so hard on herself for worrying that that was actually the biggest cause of her suffering, her criticism of her own feelings. Regardless, most of my clients have a 50 to 80% symptom reduction in just doing this one exercise, positive reframing, along with a little empathy from me. Now, that's not to say they're 100% cured or 50% cured, sorry, but it is an immediate, powerful impact on their feelings to understand they are not broken. because they're hurting. So here's how it works in 5 steps. Now, this will look a little different in therapy or a coaching session with a team clinician, but we're going to make it in 5 steps so you can follow along. Step number 1, identify X. Identify the painful emotion. What is it you wish you could change? Is it feeling anxious, depressed, guilty, inferior, lonely, frustrated, hopeless, or maybe a combo of all of these? Usually it's a combo. Now pick a moment in time when you felt that way. When was it? What were you doing? Who were you with? How were you feeling? What kinds of negative thoughts were you having? In team, we often do a daily mood log to record all of these, and you can get one of those on David's website for free. I'll put a link in the description below. Step 3, we're going to explore and write out all the benefits and positives of feeling this way, along with any values that surface. So some of the questions will be, what benefit or advantage might this feeling serve? How might it be helpful or realistic? What does this negative thought or feeling show about you that's beautiful, positive, and awesome? This is likely a strange new concept, and it might even seem a little ridiculous at first. And if that's you, I hope you will stick with me. If you can't see anything positive, there is a kind of a alternate question you could ask. What would it say about you if this feeling suddenly disappeared, even if nothing else changed about the situation? More on that later. It'll become clear. Step 4, acknowledge and honor all these values and beautiful things. How can you appreciate these qualities? Are they really positive? Are they real? Is this just blowing smoke? Just reflect on all this good stuff you've written down. And then step 5, you can invite in the change. You can ask yourself, given all these positives, why might I still want to change? Let me illustrate with a disguised example from my practice. Once I worked with someone who was deeply depressed. That was kind of her X in step 1, depression. Step 2 was finding a moment in time. She recalled one afternoon walking through the trailer park and saw a couple from working away in the community garden. And in that moment, she felt very alone and sad. She struggled with finding a healthy long-term relationship. And when we explored her sadness in step 3, she realized it showed her depth of appreciation for connection, like she saw in that couple. It showed how much she valued meaningful relationships and wasn't interested in the casual, surface level interactions that people often have in dating. Step 4, she saw that her depression was an expression of her integrity, not a weakness, and she no longer felt ashamed about that feeling. So in step 5, I asked, what if she could hold on to all the values, but dial back the intensity of the painful emotions? Then she was ready to learn new tools to lift her mood and even a few skills to develop more meaningful relationships. Let's do 2 more examples. How about Linda, a 52-year-old nurse and mother of 2 grown kids? One evening, she sat in her car after work, staring at the steering wheel, feeling heavy and stuck. Earlier that day, she had made a medication error for one of her patients on her ward. Her negative thoughts were things like, I'm a terrible nurse. I shouldn't be allowed to care for people. She felt down, guilty, disappointed. What do you think? Does feeling down show how deeply she cares about her patient's safety? Does it show her integrity as a nurse? Does her self-criticism reflect accountability and high professional standards? I think so. I think the discouragement reveals humility and empathy. She felt others' pain and didn't want to harm anyone. Remember that optional question I said when you're struggling with finding anything good or advantage or positive about this? What would it say about you or about this nurse if this feeling suddenly disappeared and nothing else about the situation changed? What if this nurse felt just fine making a mistake that could harm a patient? What would you say about a person like that? Yeah. Okay. One last example, Ethan, 28-year-old graduate student in computer science. One night he was scrolling through social media after class and seeing his friends post about promotions and achievements, and he felt that sharp pang of inadequacy. His thoughts, Everyone my age is more successful than I am. If I don't achieve something big soon, I'm a failure. Could it be feeling inferior shows healthy ambition and a desire to grow? Perhaps Ethan even shows some humility and self awareness rather than arrogance. Maybe this will motivate him to push harder to bigger achievements, to not give up on his goals, but yet acknowledge he might have struggles. Once we unpack all the good things, then we can move on to other tools like cognitive behavior therapy, ACT, FT, ISF, or other therapeutic method to deal with the angst and the thoughts and the other aspects important in therapy and recovery. Let's take a look at some more quick examples of what might be good about specific emotions so you can really take in this very unusual way of looking at your uncomfortable feelings. The following examples will be pretty general and won't feel very powerful until you have a specific moment in time that you can relate. I'm going to walk you through doing this yourself, so stay tuned for that. And you can even fast forward if you want, because these will be a little bit long, but I want to give you some examples, some prompts to help you when you get to a specific moment. So we'll stick with some general ideas. So let's look at sad, down, depressed, unhappy. Might be some positive things about that. Well, might help me to be more compassionate, more capable of embracing the pain of others because I understand that same pain. I could share in humanity or Christ's suffering. It keeps me from being in denial. People who lose something, they could just be in denial and they don't feel that sadness. But once you realize the loss, you recognize the loss, you're not in denial anymore. It's kind of an awareness that whatever triggered that sadness or down, whatever that trigger was, it happened. And it's important to you. Maybe that was a life event, a loss of some kind, a death of a dream. Sadness marks a precious, important moment in my life, maybe a life transition. Your kids grown up, moved out, or you had a baby, and now there's going to be a change in the relationship you have with your significant other. Perhaps feeling down and depressed actually shows you realistic. You're looking at a problem which has been very difficult and it's daunting. Maybe it's even appropriate to feel this way. It could reflect your intense love of that which you lost. And maybe it shows you're brave and courageous because you're willing to wrestle with the pain rather than ignore it or be in denial. Maybe it helps you look at your own role and take responsibility for your part. And it shows you're not willing to dismiss things in your life that have passed away. That's just a sample for sadness. Well, let's look at anxiety, nervousness, worry, panic, and fear. Let's see what advantages and benefits those might have for us. Anxiety is definitely a protective mechanism. This is your amygdala firing, warning, warning, warning. And so it's there to protect you from all kinds of things, failure, danger, conflict, and that kind of thing. So if we were looking at that, what is that? What's that doing for us? How is it serving us? How is this emotion serving us? Well, it helps keep us vigilant. It motivates us to maybe get help. Like a lot of people who are experiencing a lot of panic, that's when they go get support, whether that's therapy or coaching or read a book on anxiety or listen to podcasts or go talk to their doctor. So often anxiety, feelings of anxiety will help you, motivate you to get help. It helps you to do your best. If you're really nervous about something, sometimes actually that increases the cortisol and other things in your body. I'm not sure that cortisol actually helps like necessarily with clearer thinking, but there are these like body reactions obviously to stress, and that can actually help us have clarity of mind and that kind of thing. Can motivate you to do your best. It prepares you because of that motivation or because of those triggers that can prepare you for the future, for an exam, for a meeting. Anxiety gives us greater understanding and helps us be more compassionate for others. And I would list a specific person if you're doing this for yourself in your own daily mood log. It provides some energy to combat depression. Depression is often accompanied by anxiety, but depression kind of lowers our energy and our motivation and our will to do anything. And anxiety can help offset that and give us a little angst to keep going and move forward. It's also, like I mentioned, it's a red flag alert system. You think of anxiety as being sort of your smoke alarm going off. Woo, woo, woo. I mean, sometimes the smoke alarm goes off after you're burning toast, which, we're like, I don't want it to go off. It's just burning toast. Why am I anxious for just this little thing, this little like non-insignificant, it shouldn't be going off? Well, sometimes we need to reset our smoke alarm, our smoke detector, our anxiety. But the reason it's there has some advantages. So, yes, we sometimes do need to reset, and that's why we do this kind of work together. But, it's this red flag to help you take stock of what you might be thinking and awareness about your negative thoughts. It shows you value that thing you're anxious you might be losing or you might mess up, right? If you want to do a good job or you're protective or you're feeling responsible, you want to be ready for the unexpected. It shows you're not willing to just let things happen, but you'd rather get involved and ensure the best possible outcome. That's why we worry about our kids. We're like, are they getting enough to eat? Are they doing the things that'll be the best for their success? We love them. It shows how much we love them. Anyways, we could go on and on and on about this. Well, let's just give you some examples for guilt and shame. So, guilt and shame. What are some advantages for that? Well, that's like a feedback loop. Is there something I'm not doing that aligns with my conscience, with my ethics? Is this real guilt, or is this like something I'm like some rule I'm creating for myself, and we can adjust the real rules? But sometimes guilt is legit. Sometimes I've done something that's been hurtful, and it's kind of like a little reminder that I'm not living up to my values, that I shouldn't have said that, and I maybe it motivates me to change. Maybe it motivates me to go repair a relationship or to do better next time. But it can also, if it's, we'll say, false guilt, like you didn't actually do something wrong, but you're just like labeling yourself with all these shoulds, that kind of benefit can be that you want to be proactive in not doing something poorly or wrong, much like a lot of the anxiety advantages. And sometimes these repeat, by the way, depending on the very specific situation and circumstances. We mentioned some examples. So these will be a little bit fluid, right? These are just sort of like things to get you brainstorming. So guilt also helps us from repeating past mistakes. If I hold on to that guilt, I'm like, okay, sometimes it's because we feel like we deserve it. We're like, I deserve this. I deserve this kind of thing where like I need to take care of this. It can point us upward to a higher source, whatever God is for you. It can help you focus on what's important. It can empower you to ask forgiveness and make amends. Like, sometimes we know we should ask, we don't really want to, but then that guilt is like burdening us, so then we move forward. Shows you're not willing to settle for anything less than your standards, right? It shows that I care how my behavior might affect others. And I don't want to let others down, that they matter to me, they're important to me. Shows I value humility and I don't want to blame others because I'm taking personal responsibility. Now, there are many more feelings we could also explore. We just covered 3 categories. If you'd like a copy of the list that I created with Dr. David Burns, please check out the description below and I will have a link to that list. Okay? So let's make this real and practical for you. Here's a little exercise you can try right now. Step 1. Think of one emotion you've been struggling with, maybe sadness, guilt, or worry. Got it? All right, step 2, pick a moment in time when you really felt that way. And just really put yourself in that moment. Don't skip this part or you might struggle with the next step. Do you have a moment? I know you might be thinking, I feel this way all the time or every morning. I get it. But humor me. Just stick with one moment in time. Focus on how it feels. What's going on? Who are you with? Now, step 3, ask yourself, given this situation, what is it about this emotion that's beneficial or realistic? What does it show about me that's positive and awesome? How might it be an advantage? I want you to write down at least 3 things. Got them down? Having trouble? Remember the optional question. What would it say about you if this feeling suddenly disappeared, even if nothing else about this upsetting event, this situation changed? Nothing changed. What would that say about you? Okay. Now go on to step 4. I want you just to stop, pause the video right now, and generally appreciate those qualities. Are they real? Are they positive? Are they important to you? Would you want to give up all these benefits and values just lickety split? Reflection alone can open the door to lasting change without this willpower battle. And finally, step 5. Why would I want to change given all these advantages? And you can list those out. And remember, you may decide you don't want to, and that's totally fine too. So, to summarize, resistance isn't weakness, it's your mind's way of protecting your values. When we uncover those values and honor them, that part of us that was resisting can finally relax. And then healing becomes a partnership instead of a struggle. If this concept spoke to you, I encourage you to explore Dr. Burns' book, Feeling Great, or you can check out my other videos on Team CBT. What value might be hiding beneath your struggle? Share it in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this tool and if you found it helpful. Please hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next episode where we talk about agenda setting flow. How does this all fit into the Team CBT model? Remember, T, testing, E, empathy, A, agenda setting, M, methods. And we just talked about positive reframing, which is one part of the A. In our next episode, we're going to go through the whole flow of agenda setting. Remember, your resistance is your best self in disguise.